All right, you guys. Apparently, we were having some issues. Here I was talking for quite some time. Didn't realize we weren't live. The internet did the exact same thing that it did yesterday at the exact same time, but this time the internet came back on, but I'd already hit the live button. So here I thought we were live the whole time. This is what I've been talking for 10 minutes. Let's go ahead and start over again. Unbelievable. So, internet service provider said there was a scheduled outage yesterday, but it cannot be a coincidence that the same exact thing happened at the same exact time. Unreal. Anyway, let's get into the show today. We will get into the HANTAVIRUS ship, but first, the top of the news. Today is Alien Disclosure Day, according to Trump. And boy, did he pick quite the calendar date to do it. This calendar date is loaded. May 8th, 5-8. And of course, that is Trump's time travel number. Again, Alien Disclosure Day today, May 8th. Now, why is the number 58 a loaded number? Well, Trump first won the 58th presidential quadrennial election 58 years after 1958. He did win again 66 years after 1958. That's not an accident because his Trump Tower is both 58 and 66 stories tall. It's actually 58 stories tall, technically, but he numbered it in such a way that his penthouse falls on a 66th floor, which doesn't exist. So he knew. Mar-a-Lago also has 58 bedrooms, so he knew long before he would take either of those presidencies, suggesting that Trump had some kind of specific foreknowledge. But here's something else. May 8th is also the 128th day of the year with 237 remaining, as you can see on your screen. And there is that beast number again, 237. Room 237 from the Shining movie. Now, why is this one of the beast numbers? Well, you have 2, 3, and 7 ribs by type. In this order, there are true ribs, false ribs, and floating ribs. In that order, 2, 3, and 7 ribs, this is the shell that goes around your body. It's your flesh. That's why we call it a beast number. Now, how does this relate to alien disclosure? Well, we'll get into that. Remember Beyonce at the Met Gala was wearing the ribbed skeletal outfit with the Sol Invictus Statue of Liberty, rays of the sun emanating from her crown. Well, I need to correct an error. I thought that her daughter was 17, but it was actually Nicole Kidman's daughter that's 17, so did not relate to the number of rays coming out of the crown. But what does relate to the number of rays coming out of her crown at the Met Gala in her outfit, let's show you a picture of that. Where there was significance was that there were 17 in the middle and 6 down turned on the outside. Total 3 on each side. 17 and 6 is 1776. And here you see the ribs. Well, this must be about 1776, the founding of this country. We're coming up on the 250th year, so obviously that has significance. Now, I don't want to get too burdened down in the numbers today because there's lots to cover. We're going to kind of be all over the place today. But essentially, the other thing is that 2 times 3 times 7 is the number 42. And that is the only angle, 42 degrees, that you can see of a rainbow. 42 is also the secret to the universe and the total number of generations in Jesus' bloodline from Abraham. Now, Jesus broke those generations up into 14, 14, and 14 generations. In the New Testament, 14 and 14 is 28, but if you add another 14, that is 42. So, all of that is encoded in today's date, May 8th, if you can believe that. In other words, Trump picked today for a reason to disclose aliens. Now, what does Jesus on May 8th and all the numbers we just spoke about have to do with alien disclosure. Well, believe it or not, Jesus is actually the focus of alien disclosure today. Because you've probably heard by now that select pastors all across the United States were approached by the U.S. government to prepare their members for what is coming with alien disclosure. This happened earlier in the year. The pastors are now coming out and saying, we were approached by the U.S. government. They told us what was going on, but we can't talk about it. And here we are, right back in the right-left paradigm. What am I talking about? Well, a couple of the pastors said that they believed the aliens were demons, which I happen to believe that and agree with that. But you can imagine that that pastor was just rolled out for essentially controlled opposition, because the rest of the church is probably going to believe that the aliens are actually good. Why would they believe that? Well, because Trump is the one disclosing the aliens. And they're going to believe Trump because they already believe him about everything else. So obviously, they're probably going to believe him about the aliens, that they aren't demons. Do you see the problem here? Do you see the problem? Now, part of this disclosure day, is that a couple of the pastors came out and said that reptilians are real. Now, many of us have been saying this for decades and have been mocked for it, but they are now saying reptilians are real. Now, this is a setup, because guess what? This reminds me of the book and TV miniseries Childhood's End, in which they show the aliens as straight up reptilian demons. Now, we did a series of decodes on this, and on Sunday, I'm going to play those for you. They're short form, so we'll get through 3 of them in a show, and we're going to look at what we were talking about when we decoded this 11 years ago. 2015 is when we decoded Childhood's End. So we're going to rescreen those on Sunday because it fits into exactly what's going on right now. And I believe all of this is by design. It's the alien deception is now rolling out. Trump will do anything to deflect from the Epstein files, to deflect from the war he started, to deflect from the Epstein files. Things are going full retard, as I say. Now, let's get into this hantavirus. Everybody's talking about this outbreak on this cruise ship called the Hondius, which has 57 written all over it. Now, look at this. The article has been nominated for deletion. They're trying to delete the Wikipedia page on the name of the ship in which an outbreak happened. It killed 3 people and will probably kill a 4th and maybe even more. The first recorded transmission from person to person of the hantavirus. Look at this. Now, we were supposed to do this show yesterday on 5/7, May 7th. Look at all the 57s in this article. It has 57 all over it. Now, what is 57 numerically? It's the 5G number. 5G numerically is 57. G is the 7th letter of the alphabet. The ship is 57-foot beam. It is 5.7 meters deep. Ooh, they changed this. Look at that. 57 beam. And this used to say 5.7 meters. They've changed it since yesterday. Wow. 57. Look at this. Net tonnage, 2057. And Let's see if it still says the horsepower, which was yesterday 5710 horsepower. It's got 57s all over it. Look at this. Crew of 57. This is no accident. Yes, they changed the horsepower. This used to say 2057 horsepower. They changed the entire article. 57 crew. This is about 5G. 2057 NRT. Now I don't know what that is. Let's find that. NRT. Oh, NT. There it is. 2057 NT. So, suffice it to say that they're trying to get you to understand that this is about 5.7. Now, we'll get into what that means, 5G, and how it relates to the hantavirus as we start to unpack today's show. Because 5G ties all into this. It came straight out of the enemy of the state decode that we did. It's about tracking and tracing. You need a robust network. 5G was the first robust network for tracking and tracing. Now, when did this outbreak begin? It began on April Fool's Day. That's when the outbreak began. And it has nearly 100% kill rate. What we do know is there was a vaccine in production for at least 6 months before all this happened, suggesting some kind of foreknowledge. And here we've come full circle. I'm going to show you an series of decodes, some excerpts from those decodes that we did that led to this point. And our discussion today will center around a key character in their script, Gene Hackman, the renowned actor who died of the hantavirus, or at least his wife did. They're still not saying how he died. They're saying it was his pacemaker, and they are saying his wife died of the hantavirus, but the hantavirus is attached to him. Now, what is this about? This is about hacking the man, Gene Hackman. And Gene Hackman was the original enemy of the state. Starring in the film that we decoded, we'll get into that a little bit later. But all this suggests that this is about privacy rights and disease tracking. This is what they're doing right now. They're using technology to track all these people down because they're claiming that it was person-to-person transmission. So they're going through electronically and tracking these people through the 5G network to find out exactly who they came in contact with. As the elite are now using fear to track and trace every person who came into contact with people that died on the cruise ship from this rare form of hantavirus that they are saying is contagious from person to person. Now, the first video we're going to go back to is from last year. And already, Gene Hackman was about hacking the man, tracking and tracing with his pacemaker. Let's go to this first video here. Let's take a look, you guys.
These rodents build nests, and as you that they would have hired someone.
Let's change the speed. I watch everything at like double speed, but I'll change it to 1.25 for you guys. Okay, here we go.
Control companies have come forward saying that they assisted in this. So let me tell you the bombshell. Down here in the article, it says that they had Gene Hackman's pacemaker going offline 9 days before they were discovered. So one of my good friends who I work with in pharmaceutical sales, after we both left the company we were at, he went on to work for a company called Boston Scientific, and they make pacemakers. And his job was a support rep to calibrate pacemakers for the patient. So he was in and out of the hospital every single day. Patients would come in, he had to like hook up some wires or something and calibrate the pacemaker. Well, here's what happens. And he told me this long ago. Essentially, you're a walking GPS signal when you have a pacemaker in. And when the pacemaker goes offline, any problems with the pacemaker And the doctor is alerted that, and in fact, this is how they know to bring the patient in for calibration. I remember having discussions with this guy about all this. So I looked it up just to make sure my memory served me correctly. And lo and behold, yes, if a pacemaker malfunctions or stops functioning properly, a signal is generally sent to the patient's doctor. So why did it take 9 days after the signal went offline for people to show up to a prominent actor's house? And this is the bombshell proof that something is not what it seems. Wow. Now, let me check in with you guys. Then I have a brand new vaccine that they're talking about bringing to market. Good morning, everybody.
All right, let's go on to the next video. And this next one, let's see here. So as you can see, that was all about the pacemaker and the trackability of the pacemaker inside of Gene Hackman's chest. In other words, Gene was hacked. Now here's another video from a year ago in which we foreshadowed what's happening now. Let's take a look and listen. I think this one, let's find the timestamp. Let's see, I want to make sure I'm on the right one, you guys.
Now, only God knows how long that this
Let's see, I think we're at 34 minutes. $3.50, okay. Here we go.
The transhumanism mixed in there too, and some of it's worth decoding, but the subject matter is so hard to get through because I'm just not into comics. But I started watching this anyway because at least a couple of you had asked me to take a look at it. And I wasn't expecting anything. But then I realized the plot was about a chimera superhero. This is him here, half human, half lion. And then I realized that his genes were hacked. So you can imagine my shock when I saw Gene Hackman's name on a helicopter in the movie. Let's take a look. I wish I was making this up, but I'm not. Gene Hackman. And the movie is all about gene hacking.
Bring the power of the earth.
As this boy, who's like from a billionaire's family, is on a safari, and he gets basically bitten and mauled by this lion, whose blood drops down into his wound. He's then cured by some kind of new age lady with some kind of serum, and he comes back to life, part lion and part human.
Power of the earth.
Gene Hackman. Now, I did the math on the date that they now believe that Gene Hackman died, and I compared it to the release date of this film, and here we are, 66 days. This is the twin number that we established years ago. We found this number. Twin, Gemini, Chimera, it means all of it. It's about the mixing of two. And these are the amount of days after the film release that Gene Hackman died. Or they say he died. They estimate that he died on February 17th. That's the date I put in here. As you can see here. Now there's a little bit more to this. And this is shocking, but I just want to show you all the evidence first before we move on. Gene hacking. But there are more connections. So we've got part human, part lion in the Craven film. Were there any other lion connections to Gene Hackman? Yes, there were. In the movie Scarecrow. Interestingly, he starred in this film in 1973. This was the year I was born. And the film is called Scarecrow. And Gene Hackman plays next to Al Pacino, a pair of vagabonds. I think they're ex-cons in the movie. And Al Pacino goes by the name Lion. So we have a lion connection, but it's more specific because this is an actual scene from the movie called Scarecrow. And that, of course, is a young Al Pacino from 1973. He climbs up onto a lion. Remember, his nickname is Lion in the film. He climbs up onto a lion. Let's watch a few seconds of this. Gene Hackman follows. I think I've got this on. Nope, that's regular speed. Gosh, that sounds weird. It sounded like it was on ludicrous speed, didn't it? Okay, let's play this. He tries to separate Al Pacino from the lion, but he can't because Al Pacino is fused onto the lion. His genes were hacked. This is unbelievable. Now you know why I call these things the Matrix. Because, how do I explain this? Unless I explain it to you and you see it with your own eyes, you would never believe it. Look how long he tries to pull him off of the lion in the fountain. Now, this was filmed at Scott Fountain in Detroit, is where the scene was filmed. And essentially at this point, Al Pacino has a mental break. And this is why he crawls into the fountain. He originally brings a child in with him. The parents then grab the child away, and then he gets on top of this lion, and he's mounting the lion. And then Gene Hackman, as you see, goes after him, but he cannot separate him from the lion. Now, if you need further confirmation, we've got it. Stay tuned. Gene Hackman was born in 1930, which would make him 43 years old when this movie, The Scarecrow, came out. Well, the actor from the Craven movie that just came out 66 days before Gene Hackman died, he was 34 years old when the movie Craven came out. So 43, 34, that's a Gemini mirror. Gene Hackman is Craven, confirmed. Now, what is the spirit behind these scripts? What is this about? Well, let me go back into the chat and I'll try to expand on this and explain it to you.
Now I'll put a link to that decode as well. Here's one more. Here's a couple more, actually.
Targeted for late.
This one is more foreshadowing of events that had not happened. Let's take a look here.
They are now telling us that Gene Hackman and his wife, they're telling us how they actually died. Here's the story. Gene Hackman died of heart disease. Betsy Arakawa died of HANTAVIRUS. We had just talked about this, didn't we? Remember the story I shared with you guys when I went to there was some drama going on at our community center? And with the library and all this, I don't know if I told you guys this story. But anyway, there was a rat infestation at the community center. And essentially they had to get rid of all the books. And there was like rat urine and all this stuff on this stuff, right? And then I stood up at the community meeting and I said, this is necessary because rats carry the HANTAVIRUS. And everyone's heads spun in a circle. They're like, who is this person and what is he talking about? Well, this is a real thing. When you inhale like rat poop and feces and also urine, it can, not always, can, when it becomes airborne, be inhaled and cause this disgusting and crazy disease called the HANTAVIRUS. This is why it's important to make sure that if you have a rat issue, don't just let the rats run wild and nest all around your house and in your things, because it could make you sick and you can literally die from this. Now, this HANTAVIRUS is mostly in the West. You know, west of the Mississippi is where it appears the most on a map. There are 1 or 2 cases in states east of the Mississippi, but west of the Mississippi, the most prevalent areas where there's the most HANTAVIRUS is in New Mexico and Colorado. So this actually is a thing. Now, I'm not saying that this is actually what happened to Gene Hackman's wife, because there's something fishy going on here, and we'll get into that in a minute. But essentially, it's a possibility. Now, a lot of people saw her just days before they say she died, walking around just great. Nothing wrong. They even had dinner with friends just days before the alleged time of death. And this HANTAVIRUS takes weeks, sometimes months, to actually start to affect a person, and it's kind of a gradual decline. So something about this story doesn't line up, does it? But what they are saying is that she was dead an entire week before he was. An entire week. And then they're saying that essentially at this point, he was 95 and suffering from Alzheimer's, maybe some dementia, and likely either didn't realize she was dead or was in such grief that it likely could have triggered a heart attack. So he died after her, like a week after. Wow, what a story, right? Now, again, people saw them just weeks before this, hung out with them, and they said everything was fine. Everything was fine. So something does not jive with this. Now, they were married a long time, and I can only imagine what that must be like. He finds his wife dead. But here's the thing. Why didn't she go to the doctor? If you can't breathe. Okay, so let's talk about the symptoms of hantavirus. It's a pulmonary hemorrhaging. So it's literally like a zombie disease where you bleed from the inside out. And you start just feeling horrible and you can't breathe. And there's a lot of coughing, which is weird because his last name is Hackman. I mean, it just goes without saying, like hacking, like coughing. So the hantavirus. Now, what is this story really about? Well, I believe this is a clue of the shape of things to come. They're leaking a little bit of information about our future. Okay. And this is when you're cleaning up rat feces. This is one instance where I would tell you to wear a mask and maybe even a ventilator while cleaning up after mice. You know, we've all done it. I've done it. You get a blower out. You start blowing this stuff around. You're breathing it in. You know, you see some rat droppings. Like I have a garden shed out here. See some rat droppings in there and you start sweeping around. It's easy to like inhale something like this. Now, here in Arkansas, there has been only one case of hantavirus like per year. So it's really not a thing out here. And it's carried mostly by what's called a deer mouse, which are ubiquitous across the United States. But apparently there's some deer mice that get the hantavirus and some that don't. Again, the map is typically west of the Mississippi is where most of the hantavirus happens. So this is the story, you guys. This is insane. So get rid of your mice problem. I'm actually using the cornmeal half and half with baking soda. Just mix it together, stick it in a bowl, and wherever you think these rats are, stick it in there, and they'll eat it. You'll actually see their droppings inside the bowl. They'll literally just sit in there and eat it, and then they pretty much just explode at some point. They go back into their den and they just explode. I mean, it's kind of miserable for the mouse, but look, would you rather die of something like this, or maybe you have someone who's elderly in your care, and wouldn't you feel horrible if they die from something like this? Like, screw the mouse. I mean, this is about humans. You know, when did we get in the habit of feeling sorry for animals that can kill us? So don't use a blower when you're, cleaning up mouse droppings. Put a mask on. Just get a garden mask. Stick it on if you think there's mice around. So why didn't she go to the doctor? Okay. And what happened in the week when Gene Hackman was literally looking at his wife laying on the ground? I mean, think about it, you guys. She was literally laying on the ground. He didn't even pick her up. And maybe he was just in shock. I don't know. But what a weird case. Now, let's keep going here because I got more on this hantavirus. Let's see here. Is it in here? Now, I pulled up this study. This is crazy. They're saying that there's no one state has over 200 cases per year. But what if hantavirus deaths are misdiagnosed as something else? What we do know is, as I said, it's a hemorrhagic disease. Person bleeds out from the lungs. It's kind of zombie-like, I guess. There's a map in here. Let's find it. Let's see if there's a map. Oh, this story talks about the bats being a vector for this. So they found all these bats down in Brazil that carried the hantavirus, and they think that they got them from mice. I didn't know bats ate mice or drank their blood, but this is insane. So now we have this weird, almost this COVID connection, right? Because this is what they're telling us how COVID, the bats was a huge thing about COVID. Now, of course, I don't believe that, but I wanted to note the bat connection and how this could link back to the shape of things to come. Maybe this is a clue. Now, why else would I say this is a clue? Well, the last time that the hantavirus was in the mainstream news, are you ready for this? All I did was do a Google search on hantavirus before it became mainstream news now. And the last time anybody was talking about it was during the pandemic in 2020. Look at this, New York Post. Why hantavirus pandemic is unlikely to happen. And here is the deer mouse. That is one ugly looking mouse. He looks like an alien with those eyes, doesn't he? And the reason why they were talking about this during the pandemic is because there were some deaths in China due to the hantavirus. There was a hantavirus outbreak in China. And people were like, oh, is this the next pandemic? This was in 2020.
Whoa, you guys, bingo. Gain of function. This is why we look back at these videos, right? They're saying it leaked out of the lab. Well, I truly believe there's no doubt in my mind that the hantavirus is a bioweapon to hack the man and to turn people into chimeras. But all that aside, if during the pandemic they also had a hantavirus outbreak in China, maybe that leaked out of a lab as well. Let's keep listening here. This decodes from a year ago.
You guys, let's read this story, see if there's any clues. And this is why I believe they're bringing this back up again. Because here we are, 5 years later. It says here, experts were seeking to allay fears that the death of a man in China due to hantavirus suggests that the coronavirus is about to be joined by another pandemic. The unidentified victim from Yunnan province died while traveling on a bus to work in Shandong province, sparking the hashtag hantavirus and a widespread panic that another major killer was in the offing. Scientists were quick to stress that the hantavirus is not new. It is only rarely believed to have been passed to humans, unlike COVID-19. Hantavirus cases are rare, according to the CDC, and spread through close contact with rodent droppings, urine, and saliva. Do you guys see the connection here? I hope you do. Between what's happening now with Gene Hackman and what happened during the pandemic. Let's keep reading. Certain kinds of rodents in the U.S. can carry the virus, which is transmitted when someone inhales contaminated air. Hantavirus that cause human illness in the United States cannot be transmitted from one person to another. In some rare cases in Argentina and Chile, there has been person-to-person transmission when someone is in close contact with an individual who has a type of hantavirus called the Andes virus. So the door is cracked open.
Whoa. So from a year ago, we pretty much predicted this most recent outbreak because they're saying the same exact Andes variant is what caused the cruise ship outbreak. And here we mentioned it a year ago. Wow. Let's keep listening.
In the U.S., the virus can cause a potentially fatal respiratory disease called hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Its symptoms include fatigue, fever, muscle aches, headaches, dizziness, chills, and abdominal problems. When the lungs fill with liquid during the later stages, coughing and shortness of breath can occur. So this is a progression, isn't it? So how did people see Gene Hackman's wife as healthy and then all of a sudden she's dead? From 1993 to 2017, there were only 728 confirmed hantavirus cases in the U.S., most of which were not fatal. Wow. What a trip, you guys. This is why we have to read between the headlines, right? Because otherwise you'd never see the connection between this announcement and the pandemic. So, what else is going on? Oh, remember we did the math on what we thought was the original date of death of Gene Hackman and his wife. And we're like, what if this is the mirror date of the movie Enemy of the State? Remember this? Well, guess what? It is, in fact, the mirror date of the movie Enemy of the State. Now, let me explain this to you because some of you are new to the channel. You don't know what a mirror date is. But almost every decode we do, I look at the mirror date. What is the mirror date? Well, let me show you. Enemy of the State released on November 20th. And as you can see here, this is all confirmed in the timestamp right there in the movie cover poster. 11/20. Now, it's a timestamp, not a calendar, but this is what they do. They mix and match. Here it is under Will Smith. Watch this. 11/20 is World Children's Day and National Child's Day, but it's also the 324th day of the year with 41 days remaining. So this is how you find a mirror date. You take the number of days remaining and you make that the day of the year. So let's look for the 41st day of the year. And that is February 10th. Literally the date that they say, well, it's actually one day off. They said February 11th is when she died, that Gene Hackman's wife died. Now, what are the odds of this? What are the odds that this movie literally predicted the date that his wife would die? Well, I don't know what the odds of that are. But to me, it sounds very suspicious, doesn't it? This movie from 1998. Look at this. Even the movie's from 98. And in the time, it's got 98, right? So this is confirmed. This is how they do this. Now, wait a minute. How long ago was 98? So we're in 2025. So it's 25. That's 27 years ago, right? 27 years ago.
Okay, so you're probably chomping at the bit. Casey, let's watch your enemy of the state decode. See how all this fits together perfectly? Let's take a look, you guys. Enemy of the state. Confirmed. Tracking, tracing, virus. Now you'll remember that Will Smith was the main character in Enemy of the State. And of course, he later played in the notorious virus film, I Am Legend. This was always about disease and tracking. Let's take a look at this decode and we'll finish the show with this. Put this on 1.25 speed so we can get through it. Here we go.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Apologies for being late, you guys. I thought. Good morning, everybody.
Whoops.
Good morning. Oh, get ready for the show this morning. I caught an enormous weight about 50. You've got to clean these.
Okay, I'm just fast forwarding through this. Let's get to the decode.
Now, for those of you that have been on this channel for a while, you will remember that we did screen this film and we decoded it years ago. I can't remember exactly how it went down, but had a lot to do with Blind 11, of course. And I had to probably pull that video down to save the channel because YouTube went through, of course, and was taking channels out left and right. We survived that barrage from YouTube, but in order to do that, I had to remove a lot of videos. Now, no videos will ever be lost again, though, because they're all backed up on Odyssey. So if sometimes what I'll do is I'll put on Odyssey, because you definitely want to think. I think we've gotten to the point now.
Okay, let's see here. Let's get to the decode, Casey. Hold on. Sorry about that. I don't even back my stuff up on Odyssey anymore because they make it too difficult. So, okay, here we go.
Decoded this the first time. Of course, we talked about Blind 11, which, as you will hear later in the film, is spoken. The birth date of Blind 11 is actually spoken, as one of these actors is discussing the surveillance police state. Now, this movie was pre-Blind 11, which makes it very, very creepy and cryptic. It was also pre-Patriot Act as well. But yet you're going to see all these references that seem to be pointing forward to what they knew they were going to do and enforce on our nation. So let me give you the backdrop of this film before we get into some of these scenes. Let me make sure we're connected. All right, looks like we got good sound. Everybody's starting to filter in. So Will Smith is actually in this film. And in fact, this film was one that one of you, I think it was Geo something, YouTube channel, asked me to take a look at this. Casey, you got to look at Enemy of the State because there's umbrellas in it and there's syringes and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm glad that I looked at it. Now, let's get into some of this here and talk about this, the backdrop of this film. So Will Smith plays an attorney and his wife is kind of like us. She's basically a truther. She talks about the, all these conspiracies and things that we often talk about the surveillance state and how that infringes on our privacy rights. Well, what happens is Will Smith unknowingly receives a videotape, and on the videotape, it is the murder of a congressman by the deep state. It takes place at like a duck pond, and they thought nobody was around, but in fact, some guy had a camera set up to watch birds that he picks up, kind of like a trail cam, and it picks up this murder. So the deep state goes after Will Smith in an attempt to destroy his credibility and his life. They cut off his credit cards and everything. And they try to make him look guilty. They try to pin another murder on him, and this keeps going on and on and on. So let's open this up and start to take a look at this montage that I put together. I'm glad everybody could make it to the show. Again, apologies for being late. I'll get that video of the revelation was the one that wanted me to ask me to do it. Now, let's go ahead and fire this up. This is crazy. Watch and listen very closely.
This bill is not the first step to the surveillance society. It is the surveillance society.
This bill isn't the first step in the surveillance society. It is the surveillance society. And you're going to hear them talk about this Privacy Act. And this has to be the Patriot Act. It just has to be. Before it ever was, I don't know if it was conceived yet. I don't know if the Patriot Act was being talked about before Blind 11. But this is crazy. 1998, you guys.
Telecommunications Security and Privacy Act. Invasion of privacy is more like it.
Here's the syringe in the neck. This is when they take out the congressman, and across the pond is a trail cam that picks up the murder.
Shows the death of Congressman Hammersley. The needle behind the ear. 3 faces readily identifiable.
The needle behind the ear. So they talk about, let me turn the sound down because it looks like you guys are getting blasted out over there. So that, of course, was Gene Hackman, very popular actor in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s. And he's talking about how the congressman was killed, needle behind the ear. And here you see the umbrella. Now, the umbrella is front and center prominently. We talked about the umbrella and what this actually means. The umbrella is the syringe. They share the same parts. This is their metaphor for syringes and hypodermic needles. So whenever you see the umbrella like this, typically that's what they're talking about. Let's keep watching here. Now, you saw the dog run across the umbrella. That has significance as well, as you'll see later, because it's all about rabies. Rabies injections. That's where all this is headed for the future of America. The zombie apocalypse. I don't know how it's going to happen, but this is where all the symbolism is pointing to. Going way back when. Now, as you're going to see very soon here, the characters in the film are going to begin to make the case that this act is necessary because of the danger of foreign nationals who hate America and the threat that they pose to America and to our country. Literally the playbook that we would watch unfold 3 years after this film was made. This was the case that they were making. And why do you think they're letting all these people in? It's to destabilize trust. That's exactly what it is used for. I was talking to someone the other day in California, and they said basically California has been overrun. It's been overrun. White people are now a minority in California. And so what do you think that's going to do politically? It will destabilize things. It has people angry at each other, blaming each other for things. And then you have the terrorist threat sprinkled in there with foreign nationals. And this is why they did it. The government did it. They allowed it so that they could destabilize trust and make you put all your trust in them. So the congressman is killed. He gets the needle behind the ear. And of course, that has to be the metaphor for the smack of the nation. And we saw the umbrella, the dog run across it. You're going to see a lot of dog cameos in this film, which of course mean rabies and zombies. So she walks into the shed, and this is where the umbrella is sitting, because she hears a sound or something, and it's Will Smith sneaking back into his own house because he has been tracked down. They can find him through satellite, helicopter, you name it. Voice, sound, they're tracking him down. So the only thing he can do is pull all the trackers off of his body and sneak back into his house to find out why it is they're coming after him, because he doesn't know in the beginning. And then he figures it out. A guy basically who had the videotape of the murder, he got tracked down. They tried to kill him, and he's running for his life, and he runs into Will Smith just by accident in a lingerie shop. And he drops the tape into Will Smith's bag. Will Smith brings it home unknowingly, and that's when the chase is on to track down the enemy of the state, Will Smith. Let's keep watching here.
It's me.
Now, what I want you to notice about this umbrella is completely out of place in the script. There's no reason why this should be there. There's not raining outside. Okay? This is how you know what they're talking about in their symbolism. It's props. Props are very important. Prop masters, they're called.
It's me.
The needle behind the ear.
I got rabies or something. I can't do it. I can't do it.
It's me.
I got rabies or something. I got rabies or something.
I got rabies.
Again, completely just does not fit within the context. Like, why would they write that in the script? Well, now we know. Now you know why the dog ran across the umbrella. Because the dogs have rabies. Now, what makes all this really super creepy is that what I just explained to you was exactly the conclusion that we came to within the last 2 years about what this was all going to be about. And we came to those conclusions by watching their symbolism in their films, watching their script. And that is that the smack scene, and maybe even the virus, if it exists, will be injected into the world and cause rabies-like symptoms. We're already seeing people going bald, hair coming out. These are rabies-like symptoms. So, going back in time to when this film was made, it appears as though we nailed it, doesn't it? Now, of course, there are many, many more clues. I'm just showing you the most obvious one.
The needle behind the ear. The needle behind the ear.
Now, there's a scene where Will Smith and Gene Hackman are running for their lives after Gene Hackman's hideout gets discovered and he blows it up. We'll get into that a little bit later, but they're run through a mining operation. But this is also a metaphor for something else, isn't it? Something that we just discovered in the last few months. Let me zoom in on this image here. And let me go into the chat and see who gets the answer first. Thanks everybody for showing up. I like to do question and answer and make this a little bit more interactive for you guys. It serves a few purposes. Work is for nothing, isn't it? A willowing sawtooth is the central component in a machine called a willowing machine. What does willowing machine do? It processes the sheared wool from a sheep. In other words, it basically bald sheep, and this fits right into the rabies matrix, doesn't it? Losing of the hair. Well, the cutting and shearing of the sheep is symbolism for cutting off your connection to God. They want you to look at it. That's why the helicopter flew right in front of it. Now, this shape was prominent. This very same sawtooth, circular sawtooth shape was prominent on the Guinness clock above the umbrella and a syringe in this image here at the 1951 London Fair. Umbrella. There's the circular sawtooth of a willowing machine, which you're looking at on your screen right now. Now these are fibers from something else, a plant, but the willowing machines are used also for wool as well. Also for cotton. Now, of course, Will Smith's daughter, who shears her head, and her mother, who shears her head, his daughter's name is Willow. Are you starting to see the fabric of this reality, the fabric of the Matrix, revealing itself on a spiritual level? Of course, one of you, once again, look at the sawtooth sun. Unbelievable. Something is happening here, isn't it? This is modern artwork on a bus terminal that one of you found. And there is the syringe and an umbrella, proving that we're not all crazy. We don't all have pareidolia. We don't all just make things up because it sounds great and sounds cool. There's a wide-angle view of this Guinness clock, again from 1951, and all in one line. You see the sawtooth sun. This isn't a regular sun. These are all pointing in the same direction, aren't they? And the umbrella and what appears to be a syringe-like object in the bottom. Now, I know that's not really a syringe, but symbolically and spiritually, it is a syringe, as I just demonstrated to you, because umbrellas are syringes. They both have the same parts, which is the main part is a ferrule, the tip of the umbrella, and a piece inside of a hypodermic needle. Let's keep watching here. Now, this woman is willowing wool. She's doing it by hand. This is how they originally started doing it. And then they realized that they could just put this thing on a cylinder and run it through a machine.
He is talking about ending personal privacy.
So she's like us. She ends up being right, but the damage has already been done, you guys. They've discredited people like us for seeing into the future of what these people are planning to do. And by the time we get to the future that we already knew was going to happen, it's already too late. And they still find a way to make us look crazy. We are already in a police state. Far worse than things were in the 80s. The higher, the more that the technology advances, the more security controls that they have, the more surveillance they're able to do, the more processing power, the more cameras. You guys, I grew up in a society where there were no cameras. The 80s, the only places that had cameras were banks, and that was inside. Nobody really had a camera outside in the 80s when I grew up, and yet here we are, and they're everywhere. Now, this next part, you're going to hear Will Smith make the argument for the elite, the very argument that they're trying to convince everybody. Will Smith makes the argument that people should have no problem being listened to if they aren't doing anything wrong, right? I've heard my mom use this argument before. She's like, Casey, why do you care if they're listening? You're not a teeterist. You're not going to go blow anything up. I go, Mom, you don't understand. The problem with that is we've already seen it happen in China. It's happening right now. You don't have to be a teeterist to get in trouble. These people have nothing better to do than to write tickets and citations and show up to your door and harass you. Take your children if they can. It's the unfair laws. And, as it sits now, most laws are unenforceable or very rarely enforced. But once they have 100% efficiency at being able to enforce those laws, they don't need patrol cars anymore, do they? They go right to the crime, or right to what they call a crime, what they've deemed a crime. 100% policing efficiency. 100%. There is no more patrolling because the cameras and algorithms are doing that for them. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the last several decades, more and more unfair laws are becoming more and more common, aren't they? And then here's the other problem. As soon as their electric kingdom and their surveillance state is in place, guess what? They can make any law they want to now and enforce it 100%, and you won't even be able to object to it. You won't be able to say there's an unfair election. They'll call that disinfo, and they'll come to your house and tell you you can't say that. That's against the law. They'll make a law saying that you can't say disinformation. You see where all this is headed? And then there's no way out of it because guess what? You're under surveillance state. You can't even break these laws anymore if you wanted to. You can't even get out of it. You basically have to comply or you lose your freedom and you lose your money. So anytime someone tells you, if you're not doing anything wrong, what's the problem? You tell them exactly what I just told you. And that's when it will begin to sink in. And you tell them how things have already progressed. Let me give you a simple example. Look what radar, police, highway patrol radar has done to catching speeders, right? Now, this is just one example. Growing up in the 70s and, or born in the 70s, but people that grew up in the 60s and 50s remember a time where there wasn't radar. So cops didn't just sit on the side of the road to catch speeders. And if they did, they only caught people going super, super fast that they could prove were speeding because they didn't have radar. And so now we've got a situation where cops will just sit and pick people off going 5 miles over the speed limit. That's an example of how technology has increased infractions and made it so that you can't do this or that, X or Y. Do you see the problem here? And this spills over into everything. Jaywalking. A camera catches you, and this is exactly what's happening in China right now. A camera catches you jaywalking, goes against your social credit score. And I could sit here for hours and list examples of how things have changed. And it's only going to get worse. We're at the beginning of something. We're actually about a quarter in the way through it. But it's only going to get worse. And next thing you know, you're going to be living in a place where if you walk out your door, because the average citizen breaks multiple laws every single day, it's just there's no one around to enforce it. But when we get to a day where you can't even walk outside your door without thinking conscientiously about what you're going to do and make sure you don't break a law, that's when all of this will settle in and sink in. This is when you'll wish that you had stood up and said something. Not that it matters anymore, because I believe that all voting is fake anyway now. So even if you tried to vote for someone that you thought wasn't going to push this, it's already too late, you guys. They put in place who they want to be put in place. Look what happened in France. You guys, it was 2 years ago. The Yellow Vests, there were people in the streets opposed to Macron. Like 90% of people don't even like him. Not that Le Pen's any better, because again, they give us two choices that they know that they can control. That's who gets to get the chance to be elected.
Chiming in here back to 2026. This video that we did on Enemy of the State was from 4 years ago. I wanted to be clear here. Let's keep listening.
It's people that they already have control over. But look at what happened there. Nobody likes him, you guys. How did he just win an election? We all know how he won. We all know how he won. People were not happy with being forced to have their businesses closed. Nobody liked him, and he still won. So, surveillance state is no good for anybody. I'd rather go it alone and protect my own property. Because the state can target anybody they want to for arrest. Especially people who they either don't want to come to power, or people that gain any kind of influence, or people that go against the national agenda that they have in store for the future. Let's say, for instance, I love my gas stove. I don't want to go to an electric stove. So I'm going to speak out about that. I'm going to say, you know what, you guys? No, don't give up your gas stoves. Well, what if I started gaining some traction? And all of a sudden, millions and millions of people sided with me. Well, what do you think the police state, surveillance state would do? They would find some dirt on me and shut me down, wouldn't they? So now you're seeing the problem. Now listen to this part.
Do you want your phone tapped?
I'm not planning on blowing up the country.
And freedom have always existed in a very precarious balance. And when buildings start blowing up, people's priorities...
When buildings start blowing up? Are you kidding me? Which is exactly what happened 3 years later.
...tend to change.
Reynolds Thomas Bryan, born 9/11/40.
What?
Reynolds Thomas Bryan, born 9/11/40.
Blind 11/40. Look at his transfer date. That's the first day of Lupercalia. Remember I told you the two are interconnected? Lupercalia, the Wolf Festival, ancient Roman festival, pagan festival, and Blind 11. They're interconnected.
Fiscal School, DCBA, Harvard, PhD, Princeton.
And when buildings start blowing up, and when buildings start blowing up, and when buildings start blowing up...
Then they show the hideout, Gene Hackman's hideout, falling into its own footprint after it was rigged with explosives. Because that's what burning buildings do, don't they? They fall inside their own footprint. Actually, they really don't. But this is what they're planting the seeds to accept what was going to happen. They usually fall sideways, because to fall in their own footprint, you would have to remove all the material and all the supports evenly and time it perfectly from the top of the building to the bottom of the building to make it fall in its own footprint.
What was happening?
Or you'd have to turn it to dust with some kind of weapon.
Blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
Let's back up here.
What the hell is happening? I blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
He goes, what's happening? He goes, I blew up the building. He's like, why? Because you made a phone call. Now let me break that down for you. Why would they say it's because he made a phone call? Well, we know what the script says. Will Smith stopped at a convenience store, and Will Smith wanted to contact his family, and he got on the payphone, and they were able to track him down and track them back to the hideout. Well, let me postulate a different story than the cover story that we're given here. It wasn't explosives at all that took down the building. It was actually a copper device. Tesla technology. Now he's going to explain later that there was copper inside the building. Copper wire. Now, we know that telephone lines are copper, so he's basically giving away the true weapon that probably brought down the buildings. A copper device, as we had discovered 7 years ago. Now, before we finish this decode, one of you looked up some calendar dates surrounding some of the recent films that we've been decoding, and you began to notice patterns. Patterns that we're going to talk about right now. This is Omega Man, the movie. And Will Smith was in a movie called I Am Legend, which was the prequel. I'm sorry, Omega Man was the prequel to I Am Legend. Same exact plot. Will Smith is Charlton Heston. Okay, now watch this. Looked at the release dates of these films, and what you have is, actually, I didn't look at this. Someone sent this to me. Gotta be clear here. There are 10,999 days before Blind 11 would happen that Omega Man was released. Now, what does this mean? Well, if you count the day and include the date of the calculation, then it's actually exactly 11,000 days. The odds of that happening are very slim to have the exact amount of days like that. You could also look at this 999 as a 666. Now, you might not accept that synchronicity and that coincidence, but this one will be more alarming and shocking. Charlton Heston died 3 months and 22 days before I Am Legend released. 3 months and 22 days before I Am Legend released. The very film that would be the sequel to the Charlton Heston film. Was this some kind of sacrifice? I don't know. He was old. 3 months, 22 days, 113 days. Now you're going to see this number 322 on Will Smith's watch. Will Smith wears 2 watches in the film. He wears a Casio and an Omega. Omega Man. So, it's 322 every time, isn't it? And this demonstrates some kind of order, doesn't it? Yes, it does. It demonstrates some kind of order. Now, here's another one. 33 months and 22 days between Enemy of the State and its release and Blind 11. Another 322. So now you're beginning to see this hidden framework, the order, the continuity to these films and events. I call it the Matrix because that's what it is. Now let's finish up this decode here because there's even more. If you're shocked now, it goes even deeper. Now we're going to back up a bit to this scene. And you see on the bottom of your screen, it says telephone, internet, Blind 11, and Patriot Act. What does all that mean? Well, you're probably asking, how is this surveillance state going to finally happen in its full form? Well, the only way it can happen is with an electric kingdom. Now, another revelation we've been talking about at length is this electric kingdom. And it was born out of the air. What do you mean, Casey? Well, I'm going to show you. The electric kingdom was born out of the air. The ruler of the air, of course, is Satan. So before you think I've gone mad, let me explain. What you're looking at on your screen are air tubes. They were called pneumatic tubes. And these were the original arteries of communication. These were the very first networks. Air tubes, pneumatic tubes. And these were in the basements of many, many buildings. In fact, one of the main air tube, pneumatic tube hubs was in the basement of 40 Wall Street, which is the building that Thump owns. Now, that particular building has been viewed and seen in many, many films. They've showed this basement with the pneumatic tubes and a vault down there. And they would use these tubes to send money around near Wall Street. There was also one of these pneumatic tube systems underneath Paris as well. Look at these. Look at this. Look at the scope of this. These were the first networks. Now, these air tubes, as I said, were used to move money around, letters, but mostly it was about trade. It was about money. It was about moving money around quickly and efficiently and safely. Right? And these very same tubes would be the tubes that underground copper telephone lines would be run through. The pathway was already set. They simply pushed the line through these tubes. And then a generation later, they started pushing coaxial cables for cable and internet through these very same pathways. Then fiber optic lines. He shall transform himself into an angel of light. From ruler of the air, to the light, the fiber optic cable lines. Prophecy is being fulfilled. So now you see how the airwaves are really the deception. Airwaves and light waves are the deception, coming straight from the devil. Now, as soon as these networks were in place, the world was finally ready for the electric kingdom, which is the final cage. It will be our final prison. Now, this plan has been going on for a very, very long time, because what you're going to see next is proof that Bush was a key figure in all of this. Watch.
What the hell is happening? I blew up the building. Why? Because you made a phone call.
Now, we made this discovery probably 3 years ago. I'm showing you again a lot of new people on the channel. George Bush was born on the exact day and year that the center trade of the world was born. July 6th, 1946 was the day that Dewey, the governor, picks the board for the trade center. This was the infancy of it. Now, what are the odds of that? That he would share a birthday with the very place that would blow up under his presidency. How many years later? 1946 to, I guess that would be how old he is, right? I think the odds are probably 1,000,000,000 to 1. Unless there's some other plan behind all this, right? Now, Rockefeller was at the root of this plan for the center. And look at this. In the 1950s, David Rockefeller began floating the idea of a downtown World Trade Center. It would help revive the area's fortunes in an era when many companies were relocating to Midtown, as well as give a new home to the New York Stock Exchange. In theory, the complex was to be built on the East River near the Fulton Fish Market, which would not have affected Radio Row. As the WTC project was getting off the ground, Rockefeller created a new newspaper, the Down.
I'm refreshing because the resolution was at 360. I wonder what that's about. Let's see here. See if we can get this to work better, you guys. Whoa, it only plays the video at 360. That's crazy. Let's go back. Huh. Won't even play anymore now. Let's go back to 360. Obviously, this is a very important video.
Downtown Courier.
Here we go.
As a PR mouthpiece for the development. In 1959, the paper praised Radio Row, which it recast as, you ready? Electronic City. Now, for those of you that have been following the channel closely and watching all the daily shows, you're probably getting chills right now, because we had just recoined the term Electric Kingdom within the last 4 or 5 months, haven't we? We did probably 5 shows on the Electric Kingdom, because we realized this is where everything was headed. They're trying to do away with natural gas. They're now demonizing natural gas. Natural gas used to be hailed as a clean energy, and now all of a sudden it's not so clean. They want everybody on the electric grid, electric stoves, electric this, electric that, electric heat, electric everything, so that they can simply turn it off and on when they want. They could set prices wherever they want and enslave you through your use of electricity. And make no mistake, by the end of all this, they will be determining how much electricity you get based on your social credit score. Never ever let a government centralize your energy into one place like that. That's basically shooting yourself in the foot. Now, how is this electric city concept appearing in this completely separate research that we were doing about the origins of the Center for Trade of the World? And I'm scrambling the way I say that because you're not allowed to say those 3 words in a row like that. You get flagged. It's already happening, you guys. We're already in a surveillance state. If I can't speak freely, but then you go to the mainstream news channels and they can speak freely and without getting canceled, that we're already here. It's just that right now they're focusing on people that have an audience. Pretty soon it's going to be every single person. Let's keep going. Now, the document you're looking at now is a document that I dug up from the original legislation from Bush's birthday and the establishment of the center of the world of the trade. And when I read through this document, my head almost exploded when I read what I'm about to show you next. Because what the document appears to say and disclose in 1946 is that the Center for Trade of America, the one that went up in flames, was fashioned after what's called a sample fare. And not just any sample fare, a particular sample fare. The document names it Leipzig. That was created by the Yahtzees. And it even says and mentions in this document the REICH. The document compares the TC, the WTC, to these fares, and it mentions the government of the REIC to the H and the Leipzig Fair. Now, this is shocking because what it suggests is that the very foundation of trade in this country was fashioned after what everybody's been trying to tell us all along. Remember Project Paperclip? Why would you bring people over from there? Why would you bring Yahtzees from there and put them in NASA and put them in our government and in our science, in our labs, in our pharmaceutical companies? Why would you do that? Well, this gives us another piece to the puzzle, doesn't it? Let's keep watching here. Now, of course, I'll link all these papers and everything so you guys can see this. So, I'm not making it up. Actually, you can see here, if you want to look this one, I don't know if I kept the link to that, but just type in first report of the NYS legislature.pdf, and here's the link here in case you want to, anthonywrobbins.com, because I don't think I did save this one, but you can type that in and find this very easily, okay? Now let's keep watching here, because they're going to mention the privacy bill again, and you're going to see the name Patriot on the ferry, obviously referencing the Patriot Act.
That this bill will in the end provide the kind of security that this...
What security? The kind of security he's going to need.
Does this mean the privacy bill is dead, Congressman?
In its current form, yes, but the...
Does this mean the privacy bill is dead, Congressman?
In its current form, yes, but the issue is still very much alive, I can assure you.
Privacy bill, privacy bill, privacy bill.
Obviously, they're talking about the Patriot Act. They were already drafting it. They already knew they were going to draft it because they already knew what they were going to do that would get them to be able to sign and get everyone to accept the Patriot Act. So let's get back to Gene Hackman's hideout before he blew it up. And you're going to hear him talk about telecommunications control. And we get more clues about the Patriot Act that would change America forever. Watch.
You, Bobby? I told you they had this type of capability, and that goddamn privacy bill is just another way for them to expand the power.
And get into your bank statements, computer files, email, listen to your phone calls. See, the government's been in bed with the entire telecommunications industry since the 40s. They've infected everything.
My wife's been saying that for years.
Every wire, every airwave. The more technology you use, the easier it is for them to keep tabs on you.
Tens of millions of foreign nationals living within our borders, and many of these people consider the United States their enemy, and they see acts.
Oh, you shouldn't have. This thing must have cost 12, 13 bucks. Oh, you shouldn't have. This thing must have...
There you go. 322. Now, remember the calendar dates that I just showed you earlier in the show. How the 322 kept showing up over and over again between the dates of these films and the major event, Blind 11, as well as the death of some of these actors, release dates of these films. This particular watch he's holding is a Casio. But at the end, he actually has two watches. This is like his active watch, and then his more formal watch is an Omega. And you'll hear them say that here in the script here.
Cost 12, 13 bucks easy.
It's completely secure. Copper wire mesh keeps the radio signals out.
So this is Gene Hackman and Will Smith at Gene Hackman's hideout before it got blown up. Talks about a copper mesh keeping the signal out. And this is the clue. The clue about some kind of electronic device that would bring down the building before it imploded. Copper wire mesh. Now, this could also be a clue about the coming electric kingdom, because we are now surrounded by copper mesh, aren't we? These Jive G Whiz base stations are full of copper. And this is why we saw copper coin shortages in our country, because they tapped into the coins, which I believe these copper was put into the coins to create basically a storage mechanism that they could later tap into. Because coins did not used to be filled with copper. This was a modern development where they started putting copper in the core of every coin. Now you can look that up. I'm not going to argue with people about that, because it's right there. They show you. You can just type it in, Google it, and it shows you the history of coins, what they used to be made of in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, and then how they started putting copper cores in all the coins. Every single coin has a copper core in it. They're like 60, 70, 80% copper in the middle. And then they coat it with like nickel. The penny has the least amount of copper. It's only 2 to 3% copper, and it's just because it's a coating. So they reversed everything. So it makes it look like the pennies are copper because they look copper, but they're really the least amount of copper of all the coins. So what's the best way to store precious metal that you're going to need in the future, knowing you're going to build an electric kingdom 40, 50 years from now? You hide it in something of value. Why do you think they took the copper out of the pennies? Because people throw pennies away, and they didn't want the pennies going right back into the earth. Do you see what's happening here now? It's an entire plan that these people had. So they took the copper out of the pennies. They're like, people throw those away. Let's store it in nickels, dimes, and quarters, because people don't throw those away. And then when we're ready to gather up all this copper, we'll just pull it out of circulation. And that's exactly what they did. Melted it down, and they're using it for these base stations. 60,000 base stations they're going to need. Now, some of these base stations are a simple cabinet, an inconspicuous cabinet sitting down on the street level. Some of the base stations are much more extensive, whole buildings, where these Jive G base stations are. Let's keep going with this. We're almost done with this, you guys. I'm glad you guys could all show up to this. This is a very important show. So, how does that fit into some kind of weapon? Well, I don't know exactly how this weapon was created or exactly how it works, but somehow they've been able to use copper to turn things into dust. Dustification. Now, Gene Hackman calls his little hideout here that's surrounded by copper, he calls it a jar. A jar. Weird, right? Why would you call something wrapped in copper a jar? Well, it's because a jar is like a looking glass. A jar is what you put people inside, or things or animals or insects, so you can look at them and you can see them from all angles. So really, this is twofold. It's the surveillance state, the copper mesh, and probably a weapon. Now, let's keep watching here.
This is where I work. It seems strange to you, but this has been my office for 15 years.
Now this guy, this was the first guy who accidentally recorded the murder with his trail cam, looking at birds, right? And here you're going to hear in the background them talking about the future of electric cars. Now remember, this was 1998. I think we only had a couple electric cars on the market. Everybody hated them. Again, another very weird thing to include in a script that has absolutely nothing to do with electric cars. unless you know how to decrypt the true meaning of it.
The electric car is here.
A sedan for you.
What kind of watch is that? It's an Omega.
A sedan for you.
What kind of watch is that? It's an Omega.
And of course, Will Smith is the Omega Man. Look in the background. That looks like a spike of protein, doesn't it? I can't really see. It's kind of fuzzy. But we've seen, I'm to the point now where I can see these things out of the corner of my eye popping up in the matrix. So, Omega Man confirmed. So the enemy of the state is us, right? Anybody who stands in the way of their agenda. What's their agenda? A worldwide cashless society, trackable currency, debt slavery, and they will just begin to target those people with low tax-based properties, or who are living off the grid, or who have any kind of influence in people listening to them that are against the current system. You will become enemies of the state. I will become an enemy of the state. I probably already am. It's only a matter of time before I become a targeted individual on a real physical level, where they start shutting down bank accounts. They're already doing it to a lot of people, you guys. We've been able to kind of escape it for the most part, but there will come a time where they will make it impossible for me to speak to you. They will target people that are not deceived by voting in the whole voting process. They don't want people telling you that voting isn't real. Why do they do voting? Well, voting tracks sentiment, doesn't it? It tracks how well their programming is working. This is why they even have voting. It's not because they need our consent. It's because they want to track how well they're doing. How well is their Hollywood programming working? How well is their right-left paradigm working? Well, voting tells them how well it's working. They're going to also target anybody who wants to live outside their electric kingdom. You will become a threat, because that kind of thinking can catch fire, and it can get others to wake up. And when others begin to wake up, that's when the controllers lose their control, isn't it? Now, tomorrow we'll go ahead and get caught up on another Between the Headlines show. It's been a while since we've done one.
Okay, we are back. That's pretty much it. I'll put links to all those shows. We are back in 2026 now. That show was from 4 years ago. What a show. And you saw how much larger the channel was. And I'm glad to have all of you guys here on the channel. I guess today there are 700 watching. Typically we have 400 to 500, which is about half of what we used to have. And it's not because the information isn't as accurate. In fact, we've gotten more accurate over the years, which is why I show you these re-uploads, because it shows that we were already saying exactly what was going to happen that's happening right now. It's because YouTube censorship has gone off the rails, and I've become obviously an enemy of the state. So what are they going to do? They're going to unsubscribe people from the channel. They're not going to send out notifications, and they're going to distract people and hope that they go away and tune in to maybe a more mainstream source that keeps them locked in the right-left paradigm, right? And going right along with their agenda. And right now, it's about alien disclosure, right? So they're already setting up a right-left paradigm to further divide the church. They've already divided them with Trump agenda. So the church was divided because of Trump. Then they were divided because of COVID. And now they're going to be divided again about whether or not alien disclosure is about nice aliens or bad aliens. That will be the new debate. And everyone will be fiercely debating that. And there will be Christians who believe Trump and will believe that the aliens are good. And then there will be Christians that believe that the aliens are bad. And that's what we believe, that they are bad. So here we go. Strap on your seatbelts, you guys. This is going to be an interesting rest of the year. Absolutely. And Sunday's show, I'm going to show you Childhood's End and how we were talking about the reptilian alien disclosure in that miniseries and book, Childhood's End. And we're going to see it and compare it to Trump's announcement of Alien Disclosure Day, which is today. Okay, I'm in the chat. Is there anything you guys want to talk about before we pop off of here? Please subscribe if you haven't already. We go live every single day except Saturday. Thumbs up the video if you can while you're here. All right. Noahide aliens, says Region. Satan's time is short. Ajar means open. All right, you guys. I'm going to probably edit this show to remove the silence for the first 10 minutes just to make it more palatable, because a lot of people will probably just click off of it. What that will do when I edit that is it will remove the chat. For some reason, when you edit a live show, the chat disappears, unfortunately. So you won't be able to see the chat. So I'll give it maybe half a day before I do that. But if you want to see the chat replay, then absolutely you're going to want to watch that in the next 4 hours if you are just tuning in. I love each and every one of you, and I will see you guys on Sunday. Take care. Be safe, everybody.